Hello everyone. Welcome to Spring Boot tutorial series by JR Academy and thanks for joining again. So this is tutorial 8 CRUD operations and ideally we need some kind of database for this CRUD operation tutorial, but we are not at the database level yet. So in upcoming tutorials we need to revisit this with database connectivity. But the reason for this tutorial is I wanted to go through few more fundamentals tutorials before starting database related tutorials. So here we are basically creating the base for upcoming tutorials. So let's get started with our tutorial. So in here, we will look into topics such as what is REST APIs, what is CRUD operations, and how we can create CRUD operations and expose them with REST APIs. So first question is what is REST API? So this is a huge topic to discuss and I will create separate series on this. But for now, just get whatever things we need from the ocean of the REST. So REST is a standard basically, and it is a standard to create the APIs and we need to follow them to create RESTful APIs. So we can break the rules, but we just need to try to follow as much as possible. And it uses the HTTP protocol for that. So now next question is what is HTTP protocol? So HTTP is a hypertext transfer protocol and whole internet basically works with it. So there are other protocols too, but those are the advanced topics. So let's just not to worry about them. So to use the HTTP protocol, we need to create HTTP request, and to create HTTP request, we need few things. So first thing we require is request URL or URI, or we can say the path. So in our last tutorial, we have used one URL, which was HTTP localhost 8080 and then actuated. So here HTTP is the protocol and then localhost is the IP of my own PC, which is 127.0.0.1. But when we have actual server up and running, we can ping them with the IP or DNS, right? And then on that server, we have port number. So in our case, we have 8080 port. So server is basically a big computer, and on the internet, we can find that big computer with IP address. And inside that computer, we are using port number 8080. So in regular PC, we have 65,000, more than 65,000 ports, but out of them, we are using only one 8080. So imagine if we are running multiple applications on the same server, then we can use different port and we can change this and we will see how to change them. And the rest of the thing in this path is the location of our particular function or API. Second thing we have in HTTP request is the request method. So HTTP have many methods such as get, post, delete, put, patch, and many more. And another thing we have is the request header. So here we store important information of the request. So for example, headers can have the information about security, about authentication, about content type, and much more. It's again a huge topic. We will see them along the way. And next thing is we need a request body. So request body is basically whatever the data we are giving to the server. So in total, if you see the request, first we are giving a request URL, means the location of the path. Then we are giving our data with request body with particular content type. We are specifying that content type and the security in the header. And then we are providing the method. Method is kind of we are telling server to do something. So let's go to Postman. So Postman is a REST client, and here I wanted to show you the few things. So if I click here, I have the all the options for the method. I can choose get, post, put, patch, delete, anything. Here I need to pass the URL, and then if I go here, this is the header. So in header, this is, if you see, it is a key and value pair. So it is kind of map, and here I can use anything such as let's say I go with authorization. I can go here and then I can pass authorization here, or I can use content type if I want, or I can use access accept type, content length. So this is again big thing, but along the way we will see few of them. And if I go in body, I can see I have another few options. So we're gonna use mostly here row, and then we are sending JSON as the response. So here we click at the JSON request body, and here I can put my body for the URL. Next question we have is what is CRUD? CRUD is abbreviation of create, read, update, and delete. So these are very basic operations that we need to do very often. And let's take an example of employee management system. So let's say we hire someone and we need to put his or her details into our database. In that condition, we need to use the post method. Then if we need to retrieve those details for some purpose, then we need to use the get method, and then to delete for the deletion and put for the updation. So let's go to our Eclipse and see how we can create these CRUD operations. So for demo purpose, we're going to use our previous project that we created for our annotation tutorial. And as I mentioned, we don't have any database for now. So I will use a command line runner for the initiation of our data. So first let's implement our command line runner. And if you haven't watched my previous video on command line runners, I recommend watching them to understand more. So I implement command line runner, and here I'm gonna implement that run method. So I'm going source, and then as I showed previously, these shortcuts to create our override method. So here I'm gonna initiate that. So thing is, let's go to our repository and we need to create the data. So what I'm doing here is I'm gonna create the list of a particular object, and here for us we object will be employee, and here it is asking me to choose which list I want. So for us it is the utility list. So java.utility1 I need to choose, and here I'm gonna put employee. So this will be the list of employee object, but we don't have employee class right now, so it is giving, it's gonna give error. So let me finish this line. So if I see here, you can see here it is showing me the error. So what I'm gonna do is I just put my cursor there, and Eclipse is telling me to create the class. So I'm creating the class, and here I'm changing the package because I want all the entities should be in a separate package. So I'm choosing entity here, and I'm giving the name as employee, which Eclipse already give by default. I'm clicking finish, and here it is showing me. So Eclipse created this class for me, and every employee have few fields, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put two fields here, and this will be private integer, and this will be employee ID. And here I'm going to put string and name, and here next one we have string, and I'm going to put address. Okay, so this is my three fields, and we need to create getters and setters, and for that also in previous tutorials we have seen the shortcuts. I'm going in source, then generate getters and setters. I'm selecting all, and then generate. So Eclipse created these getters and setters for me. Now I need constructor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create both constructor, one without fields and one with fields, and I'm going source, then fields, all, generate. This is going to be with field, and next one is without field. So source, constructor from superclass, and generate. So this created everything for me. So now let's go to our repository again and see right here. So once I save this, the error is gone because we specified the employee class, and I'm putting this public because we're gonna initiate this from our command line runner. So what I'm going to do is I'm coming here, and now to initiate that I need to call the repository, meaning this main class is dependent on the repository. So I need to make an injection here. So I'm using auto-wired annotation for that, and just if you don't know anything about auto-wired, don't worry about it. We will discuss that in our upcoming tutorials. So it is employee repository, and I'm giving name emp repository. And here what I'm going to do is I'm creating first employee 1 e1 equals new, and I'm going to use this constructor. So employee id 1 and give name. So let me give Batman. So Batman is our employee, and it is living at Batcave. And second employee is, let's say our second employee is Superman, and it is living at Krypton. So this two is our employee, and what I'm going to put is I'm going to put this both two inside that employee repository, and then we have employee list, and I'm going to put both. So there is a couple of ways to do this. So I assume that you all are familiar with Java's collection framework. So I'm using that collection frameworks feature, and I'm putting E1 here and then E2, and then I'm saving it. So this is our so we initiate our list here from our main class. So now let's go to controller and see. So here I need to create a controller. So first I need to give the path, right? As I mentioned that we need some location URL, right? And for that we have a notation. So first one is a controller level annotation, and it's called request mapping. So here I'm giving, let's say, emp. So all the requests with /emp will come here, and after that I need to give uh, path here. So first, let's say we are creating a get request for getting all the information about all the employees. So for that we have get mapping. There are a couple of ways to use it. You can use get mapping, or there is another request mapping and annotation, and you can use a value attribute, but I prefer this one because this is the latest one and so many things you can skip. So I'm doing get all, it is giving me everything, and this will be the function. So public, and this function will return the list of employees, right? And I'm giving name. So keep in mind that so REST have some standards, and according to those standards we shouldn't give the name. So name of the function, we shouldn't expose the name of the function. So this get all function, you shouldn't put it on the path. So the how to design a path, it's another discussion, but we will discuss that in another tutorial. But just keep in mind that we should follow some standards, which should follow some standard practice, so we can develop good APIs. So here this function will return employee. So but to get that we need to redirect this request to the exit location, right? And the controller doesn't have that data right now. So controller is dependent on service. So I'm auto wiring service. So we have emp service, and then I'm giving name emp service. So auto-wire annotation will help container to inject those beans inside this controller class. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to return and emp service dot get all, but we don't have get all function yet in the employee service, so we need to write one. So if I put my cursor here, and Eclipse is suggesting me to write a get all inside emp service. So I'm going there, and Eclipse already created that. But service also doesn't have this data, right? So service is dependent on our repository. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going using AutoWire, and I'm using employee repository, and so this how we returns an employee repository. We need to add get all, and so right now we don't even have get all function in employee repository too. So what I'm going to do is I'll go here and do the same thing, and this will create the function inside repository. So here we have that employee list, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to return. So basically request is coming to controller is transferring this request to service, and service is transferring this request to a repository, and repository will give this data to service, then service will give that data to controller, and this is how this whole thing is working. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let me start this application so we know more little bit. This is application startup, and now let me go to my Postman, and here I already have this path here, and let me fire this. So if you see this, we have employee ID equal to 1, then we have name Batman, and address of the Batman is Batcave. So this is the response of that gate API. Okay, we will understand this thing in upcoming tutorials in more detail, but just keep in mind this, that this is the JSON, and in JSON we have, this is the list. If you see this in the line number 1, you see the square bracket, and this is the symbol of list, and inside list we have object. We have two objects, first employee and then second employee, and here we have status also, which is showing 200. So we will go in this status and other things in detail, but for now this is our get API. So let's do our create API. So what I'm going to do is, here in controller we need to use posting. So let me copy this, paste this, and add, I'm just giving add. We need to take the data from people, from the user, right? So if, let's say, if I want to create something, then I need to take the data. So, and this will return some message. So let me see, let me put string right now, because it will return the string message, it is successful or not. And then I need to take data here. So there are a couple of ways to take data inside function. So for now, let's use request body, and here we are suspecting that data will come as employee object, and I'm giving emp, and I'm telling a service to add this data to our list. So I'm giving that data, I'm creating this add function, and I'm passing that. So we don't have add function yet, so I'm going to my service and adding that data. So but service cannot add it, right? So service need to call to our repository. So again, I'm doing the same thing, emp repository and dot add, and I'm passing that emp. So right now we are not putting any validation or anything, but just keep in mind that we in actual coding, we need to do so many things with this. So this was our very basic tutorial, so I'm not putting anything else. So let's so again, we don't have this add function in our repository. I'm going on in repository, and I'm adding it. So now we have emp, and let me add that in our. So here I'm taking that employee, and I am adding that emp and returning the message. Or you can return actually the all object if you want, but instead of that, I am returning the message that successfully added. So let me stop this application and let me start this again. So I'm opening this new tab. I'm selecting the post method. I think I forget to put post in our controller. Yeah. So here I need to add, instead of get mapping, I need to add post mapping. Okay. And it is giving error. So control space, and it will import that post mapping. So let me just stop this again and start again. So I'm going on Postman again, and I selected post here, and here let me write this URL http and localhost. Yeah. So we have this add URL, and it is coming from here. Okay, so emp add, I need to do emp add like this. So emp will help to identify the controller, and then add will help to identify the location. And here inside body, we need to pass our data. So in a row, I'm going selecting row, then I'm selecting JSON, and here I need to pass data in the form of object. So what I'm going to do is I'll just copy this one and pasting here. So our third employee is, let's say, our third employee is Aquaman, and which he is living in Atlantis. Okay, and let me fire this. So if I fire, and it is showing me successfully added. So now if I go here, and if I do get all, I can see 3 employees. I added this one, third one. Okay, so let's go and create a put API. So put means we need to edit something. Okay, and for that, let me copy this. So these are the minor changes. I'm just copying and pasting. So to save the time, I am creating another function named edit, and same way we'll go to our service, create the edit, and then again call our repository with edit function. You can change this. You can put a name of the function according to your wish, but for simplicity purpose I am using the same thing. So I'm going edit and create method, and here I need to edit it. So now first thing is I need to find that employee inside that list, right? So let me go with employee ID and let me filter this list. So what I'm going to do is employee, and I'm using stream, then filter, then I'm using employee ID, and I'll compare this employee ID with this emp dot get employee ID. Basically this will identify which one to update, and then what we are doing is, so let me use for each for now. It is actually not the right way, but for our purpose it will work. So what I'm gonna do is I'm doing emp, and then I will do the editing thing. So emp dot set address, let me put this emp, I think this will give error, so I'm putting only e here, and then I am setting the name of the name whatever we pass, address, and then e dot set name and emp dot get name, right? So a thing is we need something to identify. Okay, so in a real world we usually have some ID or some primary key in the case of SQL to identify the particular object. So here we are taking employee ID as primary key, and then we are editing it, and after this edit and finish we are returning success. Okay, and then let me stop this and let me run this again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going my Postman and copy this URL, pasting here. I'm selecting put, and instead of add we have edit. Okay, and for that let me copy this, and here I need to pass something, right? So I'm choosing JSON and then passing. So let's say in Aquaman changes address from Atlantis to he is with Batman now. So let's say Batcave. So I'm passing Batcave as the address, and let me fire this. It is showing successfully updated. Now let me go to get, and if I see here, it got updated. So Aquaman is now living with Batcave. So let's now go ahead and create our delete operation. So for that, let me go here, copy this and paste it here, and use delete instead of put, and let me edit this one same way here. And so for delete purpose we don't need our whole employee object. Instead of that we can use request parameter. So this is another thing that we can use, and instead of parameter we can take integer and employee number, and control save, and here also we can use emp number, and here, okay, so we don't have emp number yet, so I'm going to service and creating one, and again same way, copy, paste, and here instead of edit we have delete. I made a little bit mistakes. So delete, and here we have employee number, and if I go here, let me create this method inside our repository. So here I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna take another approach which will work only one time. So here I can remove our employee based on the index. So it is not the right way, but to show you it will work here. So employee, and then remove and give the employee number. So why this will like this, because we can use employee number as our index, because we start with 1 and list of index will start with 0, and I'm returning deleted. Okay, now let me save this and then stop this. Let me start it again. We started, and right now we have 3 employees here. Sorry, I restarted, so we have only 2 because we don't have database. So let me add our third guy, Aquaman, and if I refresh this, we have 3. So let me go here, create our delete thing. Copying this, pasting here, and use delete. I am going here, and instead of cat, I'm using delete. And now, if I go in our parameters, I can say I can type this one emp number, because here we give request parameter equal to emp number. So I can type this one, and I can say I want to remove number 2. So if I fire this, it is saying deleted. So if I go in get and say we don't have employee ID 2. So this is how delete will work. But in actual scenario, whenever we will add databases, this logic will be the different, and in real world, employee will have so many important information, not only these 3. So our logic and everything will be different. And additionally, we need to add logging, we need to add some transaction management system, we need to add so many other things. But this is the general CRUD operation that we will use again and again, and we will revisit it as I mentioned previously, once we have our database knowledge. So that's all for now in this tutorial, but before ending this tutorial, I want to mention one thing. In this whole series we will look into so many things, so I want you guys to make notes, and in that notes make a separate section for annotations, Eclipse shortcuts, and all the tricks that we use. That will help you for the future reference, and see you then in next tutorial. Till then, like, subscribe, and keep learning. Thank you very much.